How about Captain Crunch's Crunch Berries with breakfast?
Whoa, Dad, we're on
Crunch Island. He's Jean-Luc Foot.
And he stole our crunch.
Quick, the zip line.
He's getting away.
Throw our last Crunch Berry.
No!
No one steals my Crunch Berries.
I think you mean my crunch berries. Choose your own crunch venture with Cap'n Crunch.
Feeling sluggish or weighed down could be a sign that you are not getting enough daily fiber. Metamucil's fiber helps promote your daily digestive health using a plant-based fiber called psyllium. It gels to trap and remove the waste that weighs you down so you can feel lighter and more energetic. Get better digestive health for a better you with this easy way to get more fiber. Find Metamucil at your local CVS. This statement has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Eliana Kernodle. A bill altering Pennsylvania's public school funding formula passed the lower chamber this week with mixed responses. Joining me to tell us more about this is Pennsylvania editor Kristen Smith. Kristen, can you start out just by laying out what this bill would do?
Sure. It would amend our existing funding formula for public schools. This is a formula we've had in place for decades. It's been updated over the years to consider things like declining enrollment in certain districts and climbing enrollment in others, and the imbalance in resources that occur because of that. That's an ongoing theme even today. And so recently, Commonwealth Court ruled that our existing system is unconstitutional and that lawmakers need to scrap it and make it more fair. So this bill doesn't entirely scrap our existing formula. It just changes some of the considerations that we make without getting into the complicated calculus of it all. It would essentially establish more new concepts, I guess, for the law that we didn't have before. Tax equity versus academic adequacy. And the idea here is that there would be a bulk of funding that would be divvied out to school districts based on the differences in resources that they have. So there's some school districts where they don't have enough busing and kids walk miles to school, or they don't have textbooks, or they don't have the kids living in the communities don't have internet access, and therefore, during the pandemic, they couldn't get online to go to school like a lot of other kids. And then there's other districts that have emotional support dogs and architecture classes and a wealth of guidance counselors to help students with their emotional needs. So lawmakers are saying we need to implement these new weights to the system so that we can balance the resources. And at the same time, you have a tax equity portion, which says, we need to give these to schools so that they won't raise their taxes, because that's another part of this issue is that schools are heavily reliant on local property taxes, which are very different all across the state. We have 2,500 municipalities, so that's 2,500 different millage rates, 2,500 different situations that impact how our 500 districts are able to get money. There's poor rural areas that don't have a large tax base and have to keep coming back and back and back to their residents for more, and they just don't have it. There's also very tightly packed, really dense school districts that have a large tax base, but they still can't generate enough money to cover what they need because their enrollment is growing so much and they're just so under-resourced. So that's the very large challenges that a new funding formula has to address. Supporters say what they've done here is a really good start. Critics say, no, just makes it worse. It makes the problems worse. It's more complicated, and we need to go back to the drawing board.
And this also impacts charter schools as well. What were the impacts on charter schools?
I think arguably this bill focuses mostly on charter schools and their funding and accountability reforms. There's 87 pages to this bill. They don't get to the funding formula changes until page 64, because the first 63 or 62 pages have to do with charter schools and how they get money and how they have to, be accountable to taxpayers. So a very quick primer on charter schools and what they are in Pennsylvania. They are public schools, number one, but they are schools that are not your traditional zip code assigned district school. They exist in the same communities, but you generally have to apply to send your child there. They are a popular choice among kids who are living in districts that are under-resourced, or kids who have medical conditions, learning disabilities, some who are escaping bullying trauma and other, emotional issues of that sort. 14 of those schools we have 176 charter schools, 14 are cyber charters. Enrollment at cyber charters skyrocketed during the pandemic for obvious reasons, but critics say that the way that we fund charter schools is really inequitable. Basically, school districts themselves are responsible for taking the state money that they are giving and sending it to the charter schools as a quote-unquote tuition. So they're paying for the kids that they are losing from their school to go to a charter school. So you can see already why there would be a lot of criticism of this system. On top of that, our very complicated funding formula means that some districts pay a tuition of, $8,000-9,000 per student to go to a charter school. Others are paying $23,000 to $25,000 per student. So that's going to have a large impact on the amount of funding that's left in the district school to serve the kids that are there. There's also an argument that particularly cyber charter schools have lower costs because they don't have to have building maintenance, they don't have to do utilities, they don't have to do transportation. But then there's also a counter argument to that's misleading because districts automatically deduct those costs from the tuition that they send to charter schools. So the reforms in this bill really target those complaints, and they would set a standard tuition rate for students going to charter schools at $8,000 per student. So the very low end of what districts are already spending. And this would cause, a huge cut to what charter schools are receiving. I think a fiscal note for the bill says it would reduce districts' spending on charters by 49% or up to 49% of what they currently spend. So it's a huge cut. And they're saying that this is going to save districts $530 million each year. Obviously, pro-charter school advocates are alarmed, saying that this is unfair, that this is going to hurt, vulnerable students. Special education students their funding is going to be significantly impacted by cuts like this. And they feel like it's a political attack against charters, plain and simple.
Well, Kristen, thank you for your insights on this story. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.
How about Captain Crunch's Crunch Berries with breakfast?
Whoa, Dad, we're on.
Crunch Island. It's Jean Foot.
And he stole our crunch.
Quick, the zip line.
He's getting away.
Throw our last crunch berry. No! No one steals my crunch berries.
I think you mean my crunch berries. Choose your own crunch venture with Cap'n Crunch.
Feeling sluggish or weighed down could be a sign that you are not getting enough daily fiber. Metamucil's fiber helps promote your daily digestive health using a plant-based fiber called psyllium. It gels to trap and remove the waste that weighs you down so you can feel lighter and more energetic. Get better digestive health for a better you with this easy way to get more fiber. Find Metamucil at your local CVS. This statement has not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.